Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Lions Grid. Today you have myself, Kevin Marheine, and Joe, who just got up from the chair there, but Joe's here with us
Just
today.
trying, just trying to void out some of the background
Oh,
noise.
all good. As you can tell, the setup's a little bit different today. Using Discord on the phone today for Joe, so a little bit of a different look for this video, but I think overall should be right in line with what you've seen in the past, so no worries there. Of course, today's episode being dedicated to taking a look at tonight's matchup between the Buffalo Bills and the Detroit Lions. This is the Lions' third preseason game, so traditionally speaking, this is the game where you're going to see most of the starters get most of their preseason playing time. Of course, the big question on everyone's mind is, will we see Matthew Stafford tonight? And everything out of Matt Patricia so far this week has been rather tight-lipped. About the only thing he said is that everyone who is healthy should be playing. So all the starters that can go should be playing a little bit in this game at the very least. So in theory, that includes Matt Stafford, but so far, no confirmation there. And Joe, I know we talked about it last week, we both said that we'd like to see Matthew Stafford get some playing time in this in this preseason. What are your thoughts if he doesn't play in tonight's game? Are you concerned about him moving forward if he doesn't play in this third preseason game?
I just don't know where he's going to get game time action if he doesn't get any repetition tonight or in the fourth game. He's got to get game time action to see how he's throwing the ball, how he's avoiding pressure, how they're blocking for him, how he's reading the defense. I mean, if they don't play him tonight, I don't understand what Patricia's doing. He's not really preparing himself for the regular season. Maybe move the dress rehearsal to the fourth preseason game, have him play a half or the three quarters. We'll have to find out how he's changing it up if he does something like that. Maybe a half in this game and maybe a half in the fourth game. I don't know. But, yeah, you need to get Stafford game time experience. Even though he's an 11-year veteran, every season is different, and, you have to get him feeling comfortable again playing football against high competition.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. And if you look sort of inside of the NFC North, last night the Packers played the Oakland Raiders in Winnipeg for their third preseason game. Aaron Rodgers did not end up playing in that game because they were playing in Winnipeg. Of course, it was in a Canadian football stadium, so the hole for the uprights was actually in the end zone, so they ended up shortening the field to only 80 yards. So it was a whole cluster there for that game. But the field conditions weren't, the Packers didn't feel comfortable enough with the field conditions, so they ended up holding out their starters. So, Aaron Rodgers has yet to play this preseason. He might not play in Game 4. So conceivably, if Matt Stafford doesn't go tonight, you could have two of the starting quarterbacks from the NFC North getting their first game action in week 1 of the season and sort of skipping any preseason action, which would be interesting because I think that's the first time in a while that's happened. Of course, another thing that happened in last night's preseason games, you did have Cam Newton play for the Panthers, but he left that game in a boot, so he sprained his ankle there. I believe he still should be on track to play in the season opener, but obviously there is some concern, I think, for teams. And one of the things I wanted to get your opinion on, Joe, about moving forward is obviously there's been a lot of talk about the preseason, about its format and whether or not it should be changed. We've been talking before these first two games about how the preseason games aren't necessarily entertaining for us fans because, your starters aren't getting a whole lot of playing time. So the quality of football itself and the fact that the games really don't count for anything doesn't make the games very entertaining to watch. They're great for development, like if for the players you've drafted and for fleshing out your rosters. I think the preseason is very important from that regard. But just from the quality of football you're seeing, the potential for injuries, it definitely seems like the NFL, a lot of the teams are erring on the side of ensuring that their star players, if they do play, are playing very limited amounts to make sure that any big injuries don't happen because, at the end of the day, like I've said, great for developing players, but if you have Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, your franchise player, if they get hurt in one of these preseason games, yes, there's definitely a benefit, I think, to getting them some game action. But if you lose them for the season in a preseason game, that hurts your team rather mightily. So, Joe, I guess my question to you, with teams seeming to be more willing to rest their star players in the preseason, and there's already been discussions by the teams about maybe expanding to 18 regular season games, dropping the number of preseason games down to 2 or what have you. How much longer do you think the current preseason format is going to be around? Do you see this being something that NFL teams will look to change sooner rather than later, or do you think this is, it's not an issue, that it'll continue chugging along like it has been in the past?
Yeah, about the preseason, I like the 4 games. I think 4 games is the perfect amount of practice games. It gives you leeway to test out a lot of different players, and I just think 4 games is the right amount in the preseason, and I'm not for adding games in the regular season.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was talking to my dad before the game, before the show, and I had the thought of potentially changing the preseason to more of something of a format that would be similar to the Summer Development League that the NBA uses, where they'll have guys that aren't necessarily the main starting lineup, and the rookies they drafted in the draft play together. And because really, I think the big benefit for the preseason games themselves is to evaluate who's all going to be on your 53-man roster. So part of it would be for the team's perspective to shift it over to being more of that development process, putting more of an emphasis on the guys who aren't your starters to make sure they're, you're building out your roster and you have the people you need so that if someone does get hurt from your main group, you have somebody to step up. But also the thing that I personally would like to see, which will probably never happen because currently people are willing to pay the full prices, is to see the ticket prices and the concession prices slashed for the preseason games to make it more affordable because, like I was talking about with that mess of a game last night in Winnipeg, those fans were paying like $300 to see Oakland and the Packers play. It was their backups. They were paying full concession prices, and the quality of the product on the field it wasn't good. So from a fan perspective, and I doubt the NFL would ever do it. I'd like to see the teams themselves use it as more of a developmental process, but then from a fan's perspective, I would love it if they made it more welcoming to fans, because obviously not everyone gets a chance who's a fan of the NFL to go to a regular season game. So I think by reducing the cost of the tickets and slashing the concession prices, which are pretty outrageous, I think it could give people access to the team that don't always have the ability to go see them in person.
Yeah, when you go to the game during the regular season, it's a big event. Preseason's more like a, smaller event. And, concessions, it would be nicer if they were cut. And I just think that people shouldn't take the preseason so seriously. I feel like this year it's been taken real seriously. And it's just more of a gathering during the regular season than in the preseason.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is everyone is so excited for this upcoming season that we finally got the preseason football back. Everyone was raring to go, and so yeah, there's been a lot of emphasis placed on this year's preseason, and I think part of that is the NFL's doing. You look at all of the coverage you have between ESPN, Fox, Bleacher Report. There's all these different sources that are helping fans of the sport stay connected to it pretty much 24/7. So with that, obviously more attention is paid to the preseason than it has been in the past, just because people are more connected to the sport than they have been at any other time. So, I think certainly it would be nice if people would sort of pause and take a break, because just like the outcomes just like I said, the outcome of these games isn't going to impact anything for the season. The main thing is to try and make it through with as few of injuries as possible, and keep your team as healthy as possible as you start into the season. So that's going to be, I think, the thing that I'll be watching for Detroit tonight. Obviously, want to see them avoid any injuries. So far, outside of the Jermaine Kearse injury, they've stayed relatively healthy. I believe Mike Daniels should be back today. I'm not sure if he'll be playing in the game or not because I know he just returned to practice this week. But potentially you could see our first action with Mike Daniels in the Lions uniform. Snack Harrison also, he just signed his contract extension, so, this could be our first game action with him here in the preseason. So definitely, even though it is the preseason, I think some things to be excited about. Obviously, I think the biggest question for most Lions fans is, will we see Stafford or not? So something to definitely tune in the game to see. But, in terms of these two teams, Joe, we've obviously talked about what we think and what we don't know about the Lions. Do you have any thoughts about the Buffalo Bills heading into the season? Obviously, they play in the AFC East with the New England Patriots, who I think are by far the favorites to win the division there. But this will be year 2 for Allen, the quarterback there. Obviously, LaShawn McCoy struggled last season. We'll have to see if he can turn it around this season, but the Bills didn't have the greatest 2018 campaign. Do you have any thoughts about them as they head into the 2019 season? Yeah, do you have any thoughts about them as they head into the 2019 season?
The Bills are a very forgettable football team. They made 4 Super Bowls there in the 90s, and they lost all of them, and it's kind of, you forget about the fact that they had 4 Super Bowl contending teams. So now that they're just like a subpar team, nobody really pays any attention to them. I mean, their offense is not that good. Defense is not that good. And they just don't ever really compete too much to win championships. I mean, I think it's going to be a good matchup for the Lions because, Houston usually plays tough, and New England plays the best football in the league. And I think the Bills are a team that don't play very good football year in and year out. So it's a good game for the Lions to execute some X's and O's.
Yeah, and I think, obviously from my point of view on the Bills, I think one of the things that has caused the Bills to kind of be this forgettable team is the fact that they do play in the AFC East with the Patriots, who have been so good for so long with Belichick and Brady. Really, the only other team from the AFC East to really do anything during the Brady-Belichick era has been the Jets when they had that run of success with Mark Sanchez and Rex Ryan there for a couple seasons. But outside of that, really it's been all Patriots all the time in the AFC East. So, I think the Bills have been overshadowed in that regard. I don't think, I still think if this was a regular season matchup, I would still be picking the Lions over the Bills because I think the Lions do have a better roster. So, from my point of view in this particular preseason game, especially if Stafford's playing, by the time they take out the starters, I would like to see the Lions be in the lead. I think that would be a great confidence boost, especially considering how we have a whole lot of questions about this Lions team at this point and haven't got a whole lot of answers in the preseason. But, so to have them be in the lead by the time they're taken out of the game, I think would be great. Because, again, I think if you look at the two rosters, if this was a regular season matchup, I would definitely take the Lions over the Bills. So, I think, ideally that would be the case. But, again, we don't know what the QB situation is going to be like today for the Lions. So, if it's Josh Johnson and Darren Fales in there, obviously Darren Fales impressed a little bit there last week, so it'll be interesting to see if he can continue that performance this week. But definitely the expectations shift if it's not Stafford underneath center and you're going with the backups. But overall, yeah, I think the Bills should be a good test because they're not a horrible team. I think, like I said, overshadowed by the Patriots, but they're not I don't think they're bottom of the barrel in terms of NFL talent. So should be a good test for the team. Well, yeah, like we've said in these preseason games, a lot, not a whole lot to talk about. Obviously, the outcomes of them don't necessarily matter too much outside of the injury realm and things like that. So, really, the only thing left to do is watch the game. So I know I'll be tuning in tonight to see how things go. But I think that will do it for our preview here today. Just want to thank everybody again who watches the videos. If you do appreciate the show, please do help the channel grow. Go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe. It all helps us out tremendously, and we really do appreciate your support. We will be back again doing the recap video. So if we do see Stafford play, we'll certainly be talking about that tomorrow is when we'll do that video. So hopefully we have some interesting things to talk about here from the third game, which should be the dress rehearsal. But we'll know more after tonight. So yeah, without having all the answers, we will tune in just like you guys to the game tonight. And like I said, we'll be back again tomorrow with a video to break down what we see in the game. So until then, I'm Kevin Marheine. He's Joe Wilmot. This has been the Lions Grid, and we will catch you during the next video. Have a good night, everybody.